Joel Embiid has missed almost half of his career games, and yet he is an MVP, a 7-time All-Star, and one of the most dominant centers of his generation. But at what point does talent stop being enough? And at what point does unavailability outweigh production?
When I see people saying he doesn't want to play, I've been way too much. I've done way too much, for this city, and putting myself at risk, for people to be saying that. So.
For the Philadelphia 76ers, this is the biggest question surrounding their franchise. They have built their entire identity around Joel Embiid, but every single season, without fail, his health becomes a roadblock. The best ability in sports is availability, and unfortunately for Sixers, Embiid has rarely been available when it matters most. When the Sixers drafted Embiid in 2014, he was supposed to be the savior of the franchise, a generational talent with a rare blend of skill, footwork, and dominance in the post. He had all the makings of a superstar from day one. And to his credit, when he is on the court, he has lived up to that promise. His resume speaks for itself: an MVP, a 2-time scoring champion, an Olympic gold medalist, and one of the most feared big men in the entire NBA. But the reality is, despite all of these accolades, his inability to stay healthy has overshadowed everything. And at what point does Philadelphia have to ask themselves whether he is worth the investment? Is it time to move on? Or do they continue to gamble on a player who, year after year, has failed to be available in the most crucial moments? To truly understand the impact of Embiid's unavailability, let's put some numbers into perspective. This season alone, Ben Simmons has played more games than him. Let that sink in for a second. A player who's been ridiculed for his lack of availability and commitment to the game has played more games and suited up in more games this season than Joel Embiid. And if that wasn't shocking enough, consider this. DeMarcus Cousins, a player who has been out of the league for multiple seasons due to injuries of his own, still has played over 200 more career games than Embiid. This is an astonishing statistic that highlights just how much time Embiid has missed. When you add up all of the games that Embiid has missed, he has essentially sat out nearly 5 full NBA seasons. Think about that, 400 games missed. A player who has been in the league for a decade has spent nearly half of that time on the sidelines. That is not just a minor inconvenience, it's a massive franchise-altering issue. And yet, despite this, he continues to be seen as the centerpiece of a team with championship aspirations. But how realistic are those aspirations when your franchise player is consistently unavailable? The Sixers have invested everything into Embiid. They have built their entire team around him. They have constructed their roster, their playing style, and their long-term financial commitments with him in mind. And from a business standpoint, it makes sense. He is one of the most dominant players in the league when healthy. But the problem is, and what the problem has always been, is the Sixers are paying MVP money for a player who is barely available for half the games in any given season, and especially banged up when it matters most. To put into perspective, Embiid's career earnings are nearly $267 million. That is a staggering amount of money for someone who has played just a little over half of the possible games in his career. Philadelphia is investing in a player who has consistently let them down when it matters most in the playoffs, not because of effort, but because of his inability to stay on the court, and when he's banged up, his inability to elevate in the postseason. And while injuries are never a player's fault, the reality is that it's a results-driven business. Availability matters just as much as production. For years, the Sixers have been considered a potential title contender, largely because of Embiid's presence. But history has shown us that teams led by frequently injured superstars rarely win championships. When you look at the players who have won titles in the Embiid era, a pattern emerges. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, and Steph Curry have all either played the majority of their games or found a way to be healthy at the right time. Even Anthony Davis, a player often criticized for his injuries, has played more games than Embiid and has won a championship. The problem for Philadelphia is that even when Embiid is available in the playoffs, he is often not at 100%. Whether it is a knee injury, a hand issue, or just sheer fatigue, he has never been able to put together a dominant, fully healthy playoff run. And the unfortunate truth is that without a fully healthy Embiid, the Sixers are not winning a championship, and that's the bottom line. It's really that simple. So the question ultimately becomes, do they continue to wait for something that has never happened? Or do they make a tough decision and move on while they still can? If Joel Embiid's career ended today, would he be a Hall of Famer? On the surface, the answer would seem like a clear yes. An MVP, a 7-time All-Star, a 2-time scoring champion, and an Olympic gold medalist all point to a Hall of Fame career. But when you dive deeper, his resume feels somewhat incomplete. Compared to his peers, Embiid's accomplishments don't hold up as well as they should. Jokic has already won a championship and 3 MVPs. Giannis has a ring and 2 MVPs. Even players like Dwight Howard, who was criticized late in his career, have more accolades in terms of finals appearances and impact. For someone with Embiid's talent, his resume should be far greater than it currently is. And that raises another issue. Has his constant unavailability held him back from reaching his full potential? This isn't a question of effort. No one can deny that when Embiid plays, he gives it everything he has when he's healthy. But at what point do the Sixers cut their losses? They have had years to build around him and it still hasn't worked. They have had elite teammates come and go, including Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons when he was at his best, and James Harden. They have had different coaches, different supporting casts, and different playoff opportunities. And yet, every single season has ended the same way, with disappointment. If the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results, then what the Sixers are doing with Embiid certainly fits that description. They continue to put their faith in a player who, through no fault of his own most of the time, has simply been unable to deliver when they need him the most. The question now is, do they continue to gamble? Or do they move him while they still can and try and build something more sustainable? So where do the Sixers go from here? Joel Embiid is undeniably one of the most talented players in the NBA, but his inability to stay on the court has become a real problem, and it's an unavoidable issue. The Sixers have invested millions in him, and yet they have never even made it past the second round of the playoffs with him as their best player. At 30 years old, how many prime years does he really have left? And more importantly, will he even be available for those years? But what do you guys think? Should the Sixers move on from Embiid while they still can? Or do they ride it out and hope that somehow, some way, the injuries stop being a factor? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more upcoming videos and NBA content. My name is Damian Peters, this is Basketball Network. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.